This week we'll be exploring listening and support, so we'll be looking at two different chapters. And while at first glance they may seem very different from one another, I do want you to understand that the listening process is integrally linked to the type of support that you're able to provide. Because those that are very good at listening, that is, they're very attentive, they're concerned about understanding the other person's point of view and placing themselves within that situation so that they can better anticipate how the other person is feeling, what they're thinking. Those individuals are more equipped to provide support that's meaningful, that has an impact on the other individual and affirms the relationship. So while they're two different chapters, I don't want you to think about them as being completely separate ideas and entities. We'll begin though with listening. There are many misconceptions related to the listening process. Oftentimes we liken it to the process of hearing itself, which is a mechanical process in which you take in sound waves and then they will be converted then into electrical impulses to your brain. And listening though is after you've been, and it includes hearing, but it's really after hearing that when you begin to think about the mental processes that are related to listening. When we define listening, there are many different definitions, just like there are for communication. So I post two of them before you, and the first one is found in your textbook, and it is looking at listening as a process of receiving, constructing meaning from, and responding to spoken and nonverbal messages. And I want you to pay attention very closely that it includes response. That's not something that your textbook goes into any depth on. And so in the lecture, I'll try to expand upon that a little bit for you. The International Listening Association has a definition that's widely adopted by many people in the communication field. It was proposed in 1994, and it asserts that listening is the process of receiving, constructing meaning from, and responding to spoken and nonverbal messages. Does that sound a little bit familiar to you? Yes, it should, and that is because it's such a popular definition. It has been adopted by textbook after textbook after textbook, and it includes the many different multi-steps or multi-processes involved in listening. The first step in the listening process is attending to the stimuli. That is hearing, seeing, and taking in all stimuli through all five of your senses. Secondly, moving on to understand and interpret the message that you've taken in. Then you move to memory, where you're concerned about being able to recall and retain information in your long-term memory system. And then you have evaluating. That is judging the merit of the message that you've received. And then there's responding, which isn't really, like I said, talked about in your textbook in any depth. So I do want to add that to the listening process, and we do want to look at that. Now, attending. Let's look at this to start with. Attending it to a message is the perceptual process of selecting which stimuli to focus on. And if you think for a moment about the vast array of stimuli that you're bombarded with at any given moment, how you choose to attend to a message can be very messy in many respects. That is, sometimes you choose to attend to a message because it's of interest to you. It entertains you. Maybe it's because of how loud it is, and so the sound itself and that characteristic of intensity of sound causes you to attend to the message. But there are variety of reasons why we may attend to a certain message, and that's not to say that we attend to the message that's most important to us or that we need the most, but in some cases that would be a reason. Attention is influenced by our senses, how we can take in that message. So if it's an auditory message, the message is going to be affected by that particular sense. Hearing is a process of converting sound waves into electrical messages in the brain. And if you look at the small model of the ear, or diagram of the ear, you'll see that your pinna, the exterior outer portions of the ear, takes in the sound waves. It's very important that you understand that this is not some unimportant body part, the exterior portion of the ear. The way that sound comes in is affected by the shape of your pen and the direction that it's in, and so it helps us to determine directionality of sound. So if you heard someone calling your name across campus, your pen actually helps you determine what direction they're coming from and to locate them. So it's not an unimportant part of the ear. Sound waves travel through your ear canal, and actually what happens is there's some vibrations that occur, and then you get into the inner ear where you have your eardrum vibrating, and then you have the three different bones that are extremely small in your body that amplify sound. And through this process, though, what you're taking in is you're taking in sound waves, and then you're converting it to something that you can understand, that the brain can understand, to an electrical message that will travel to your brain. Now, hearing is not the only sense, but we emphasize it especially in face-to-face communication, because in face-to-face communication, you're primarily speaking to one another through the auditory channel. However, you have a number of other different senses that are taking in information. And another major sense that we're using in especially face-to-face communication would be seeing. And seeing is vital. It allows you to take in a number of different nonverbal cues, such as the proxemics of the other person to you, their facial expressions, eye contact, and their gaze, and how it may affect your interpretation of a message's intentionality. There's so many different aspects to communication that we take in, and we take them in through all of our different senses, and so all of our senses are encompassed in the attending process. We face a number of difficulties in terms of hearing and seeing, which can impact our ability to then understand and decode a message. But oftentimes we can overcome these difficulties. For example, if maybe you couldn't hear a message very well, you can overcome it by looking at the context of the message, asking the other person to speak up. So, there are ways that we can overcome a number of our different challenges that we face. Attending is that first step in the process. And to attend to a message, it's important that you learn how to get ready for a message. That is to prime yourself for that message. If you're anticipating it, then you're getting ready for it. And we can get ready a number of different ways. Physically, we can make eye contact with the other person. We can orient our body toward them. And so we have what we would label as a listening posture that would give us energy in our body and orient our body toward the other person, and not close ourselves off by creating barriers between them and us. Also, mentally being prepared to listen is very important. You have to be focused. You have to make that choice to listen, because listening is not just the process of hearing. So hearing, which we usually think of as being more involuntary, that is, if you're in an environment and a sound happens, then you're going to hear that sound. But listening is a choice that you make. You have to choose to focus, and no one can force you to do it. And the classroom is an excellent illustration of this. No professor can say, you must listen, you have to listen, because in the end, your mind could be somewhere else, right? Your mind could be on a beach in Tahiti soaking up the rays, or over at Chili's eating one of those build your own burgers with mushrooms nicely sauteed on top. I don't know what you're thinking about, but in terms of listening, it is your choice. And that's what you have to understand at the get-go.